Welcome to the Zandbergen Report, where wealth strategies and pop culture collide, featuring your distinguished host and certified financial planner, Bart Zandbergen.
And hello again, this is Bart Zandbergen. Happy to be back in the studio. And today with me, I have Mark Romero from Mark Romero Music. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, happy to be here. It's a pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to our time.
All right. We were just talking before the show that it's been a long time, maybe 15 years or so, right? When we first got introduced.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while.
Yeah.
Life has been a crazy unfolding since then, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course. So we're going to talk about your music, but I thought would be interesting. What you do is not a little unique. It's a lot unique. So how did you get here today? What was your path, your journey to get to what you're doing today with your music?
You know, I would love to say it was like part of my ingenious master planning. But you know what? Sometimes life has this ability to kind of push us and nudge us in different directions and really kind of open up to surprises that we could have never really had planned for. And that was really the case for me. You know, I can't say I woke up some morning as a kid and wanted to be a rock and roll star. Oh. You know, oh yeah, man. You know, I always had a fascination with the guitar. I'm going to date myself here, but the fascination really hit when I went to go see Pink Floyd The Wall, 1980 in concert. Yeah. LA Sports Arena.
Yeah.
Mesmerized. And I went home the next day, you know, like any good devoted kid, Dad, how about a guitar for my birthday? Yeah, how about a guitar, man? So he got me this little, you know, Yamaha beat up 6-string guitar, and I picked it up and it was love at first drum. So it was really something that I did for me just because I had this fascination, not to get out and play and certainly not to get involved in sound healing or transformational work, but it was something I think that kept me sane throughout my career, through my early parts of my career. And it was just, complete, absolute joy. It was just one of those things I would play for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
And, I think it kind of helped me to maintain my sanity a bit.
Yeah. So, but you didn't just go right from that into your healing. You had another career. Sure you did other things. What was your journey there?
Well, I always jokingly say I'm a recovered CEO. I was in the semiconductor business for 19 years, and started entry level and worked my way up, till ultimately I took on some partners and, grew a business. I started in my garage here in Laguna Niguel and then moved to an office in Irvine, and it grew really exponentially. And, I started feeling this discontent. And I'm like, what's this all about? What am I, I'm making good money. I've got the shiny car, the home in Orange County. Why am I feeling this sense of dissatisfaction? And, I tried to compensate, but it kept moving. And I think for me, the catalyst really was I came home one night and there's my wife. She's in the hallway. And at this point in our marriage, she had already mastered the art of communicating with just a look,
Yeah.
And I came in, she had the look. It was I'm going to hit you with some truth look.
Yeah.
And she just said, you know what? I don't care how much money you're making. I look in your eyes and you're dead. When are you going to have the courage to go for the dream?
Yeah.
Well, like any good husband, I wanted to find fault with what she said and argue, but she was right, because here I had done everything that my father had set the example for before me and was completely unhappy. And I'm like going, you know what? I need to find what my purpose is. I need to find something that's got meaning and fulfillment. It wasn't originally music. I had always had this dream. I wanted to be a motivational speaker and go out in the world and pontificate words of wisdom and magically change people's lives. So I left, and I stayed on for a year to complete my time. I got out and I started crafting my speaking platform, which interestingly enough was golf and speaking events. I loved golf, couldn't play worth a damn, but I loved the game, and that's where I started as I ventured out of that old career to kind of step into something. And little did I know that music would find its way in. I had a neighbor that was a professional drummer, and one day he just challenged me and he said, dude, come on, let's make this album. You've been talking about it. I'll play drums. I'll produce it. I got a buddy of mine who'll give us, a bro deal on studio time. And we made an album just for fun, not with the intention of selling it, but just the intention to have a music album.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you figure out that music had healing capabilities?
It's funny because I laugh now. I laughed back then too. I always say I married woo-woo. My wife's always been pretty woo-woo.
Yeah.
And so she hits me up one day and says, hey, I have this friend that owns this spiritual health and wellness center. They're doing an open house. Would you come play? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll come play. So yeah, right. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll play. So after I'm done playing, the woman who runs the center, literally gets right up in my face and she goes, I hear tones in your music. And I'm looking at her going, oh man, this lady's going to get weird.
Yeah.
I could just tell. And then she got right up in my face and nobody can hear the tones but me. Yeah. And I'm kind of smarting off. I'm like, oh, I heard some tones too, man, back in the 80s and listening to Pink Floyd, watching the Lava Lamp. We heard some tones. And she goes, no, I'm serious. I know these scientists who are going to be interested in your music.
Yeah.
So I gave her a CD, and next thing I know, I'm sitting down with a former top consultant to NASA and attending a lecture on quantum physics and energy and consciousness. Blew my mind because I never really thought of looking at myself more than, what I experienced through my senses and what I could feel and touch and read and whatever. And that night I realized, man, who we see in the mirror is the tip of the iceberg of who and what we are.
Yeah.
And so after this lecture, or actually in the middle of it, they have me come up and start playing. And I see people's physical energy shift instantly in front of my eyes, increase in strength, flexibility, endurance, coordination, and balance.
You just played them one time and you saw that difference in people?
I'm like, they're doing tests up on stage, strength testing, applied kinesiology, range of motion testing.
Yeah.
Before people are going weak. I had this dude, 6'5", big muscle guy, gone weak with a cell phone up to his head.
Got it.
So what the whole lecture and what they were studying was, what are the impacts of 80,000 man-made chemicals in our air, food, and water, and the vast amount of technology that we've all surrounded ourselves with today? And how can we basically harmonize and tune people's energy fields? Because they were convinced all of these things were putting us into a disharmonious state. And the root cause behind all the physical changes, if you look graphically from the beginning of the introduction of radio signals into the atmosphere, Spanish flu, all these neurological disorders, the more that we have increased the proliferation of these types of wireless technologies in our environment and the vast amount of increase in chemicals.
Yeah.
And they were convinced the reason why was because we were putting our energy field into a state of disharmony. So in this lecture, they're demonstrating how things we use every day compromise our energetic field. And after they're demonstrating this, I'm blown away. I'd never seen anything like this. They have me come up on stage and just play. And I see people's instantly increase in strength, flexibility, endurance, coordination, and balance. They had people who lacked flexibility, couldn't touch their toes, for example. I'm playing and they're putting their hands on the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going, what the heck is that?
You never knew that before, never saw that before.
No. I had people come up and say, oh, you play nice.
Yeah.
Your music's so relaxing. That was about it.
Yeah.
And so I went home that night with this does not compute, do not compute, whatever. And then a few days later, Dr. Jones calls me up and says, hey, we've done a preliminary study on your music. your music contains these frequencies of energy that we're looking for that gives us the ability to tune our field, even when we're being exposed to all this stuff in the environment, resulting in less stress, enhanced physical performance, mental performance, and actually putting the body into an innate state to be able to do self-healing. So I didn't understand anything at this point, but then he goes, we want to buy 1,000 CDs from you and start selling them. I'm like, okay, now I understand. Now I can relate to that. Okay. And that's how I started in the field. So it wasn't really something I had planned for, or,
I know you're going to play us something, or at least one thing. But can you give us an example of something that is healing versus something that's not? Or is it everything that you play healing?
Well, I think everything that I play has the energy in it. Okay. And as I went on the journey and started working with people, started doing sound healing sessions with people, I would combine intention with the music to create a piece of music I'd never played before. And people would play these pieces in their environment or do a guided meditation with it. And they would have huge shifts and breakthroughs. I mean, literally move past reoccurring negative patterns in our life and just really have some exponential shifts. And so it was really kind of an unfolding. Now, there was a book that came out a number of years ago called Power versus Force. I think the gentleman's last name was Murphy, I think. And he created a system where he could calibrate music. And he identified certain music with like hate lyrics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Would actually compromise energy and make people weak.
Yeah.
So I had run into some people who adapted his form of testing and calibrated my music and really calibrated at a very high level.
Okay.
And so between that and what I learned from the scientists, and then of course the feedback I got from people, I realized, what, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I'm onto something here. And that was where kind of the beginning of the journey. And out of that whole discovery, I created a whole sound healing technology to really help people to restore harmony to their body, mind, and spirit. And it's like I said, I could not have planned it in 100 years, getting out of school and going, I want to become a sound healer. Because back then, nobody was doing sound healing, so it was really kind of ahead of its time.
Want to give us a sample?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my favorite pieces always to play is for opening. So I'm big on, obviously I've always had I've always been very involved in personal development, love the whole idea of goals, visioning, setting intentions to create a specific outcome. So I created a piece to kind of support people in opening to that power and that ability to, in essence, compose the life of their dreams. And so it's a simple piece. I always put it out. Hey, are you willing to set the intention to open to another level of your greatness, another level of your power, another level of your intuition, or whatever it might be for you? And listen along. So this is a musical, I call these intentional pieces musical mantras. And this is a musical mantra for opening. like, oh, well, peaceful opening.
Yeah, it's so pretty, so beautiful.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember I was doing a coaching session with a young lady who came to me with, a very common issue. Over the last 10 years, I've dated all these different men. They've all been dysfunctional relationships. So she had a reoccurring negative pattern. So I'm digging, I'm asking some questions, and it ends up that she had some, volatile relationship with her father growing up and stuff. And I asked her a question. I said, what, are you open to forgiving your dad? And she said, what, I am. I said, what, I'm going to play a piece of music on forgiveness. So I was hooked into the studio, the whole shot. I recorded the tune, never played it before. A musical piece for forgiveness. Sent it to her. And I said, here, play this in your space as much as possible and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And so she called me up 3 days later and said, you're not going to believe this, Mark. My dad called me today out of the blue and said, 10 years way too long to have an unreconciled issues. She said, you don't get it. My dad is like macho man guy. He would never do anything like that. And I said, the biggest thing we all need to learn is that life's an inside out job, man. You want something to change out there, you got to change within yourself. And that's where I'm like kind of going, what, maybe I'm on to something, this music thing.
Yeah.
And that was really a big chapter and a big step in moving forward and developing this technology.
So when you work with people, is it, well, hey, I have a problem with anxiety or depression or high heart rate. Give me a CD for that? Or is it all your CDs the same? Or is it coaching and then you customize?
Well, I do the coaching and the customization, but I have music that's specifically tailored for null and voiding the stuff in our environment. Every day we're exposed to 5G, 4G, 3G, Wi-Fi, smart meters, 80,000 man-made chemicals in our air, food, and water. And these things are disrupting our fields. So I have music for the environment that's for tuning your energy. When we get into the domain of unresolved traumas, limiting beliefs, then it becomes more of a collaborative dance. And that's where these musical mantra pieces are really designed to offset. From a quantum physics perspective, every thought, every belief that you hold creates a resonance or a frequency that communicates to the quantum field. And the field mirrors back through our health, through our relationships, through our prosperity or lack thereof, and if you want to change the experience, you have to change your broadcast. So it's kind of like the guitar, for example. I could be the best guitarist in the world, but if my strings are out of tune, am I going to make beautiful music? No. Well, in some ways, we're kind of like a guitar. The strings are the facets of our lives. The strumming and the plucking is the action that we take through those facets. And then the music is the results that we produce. And so in essence, I create music series. I have group sound healing sessions or in person and online. I do keynote concerts, all designed to help tune and harmonize. And then depending on the depth of the work that the person wants to engage in, then I have a mentoring aspect where I take them through certain processes and steps of over the last 20 years. I've gotten great clarity on like the 6 most powerful musical frequencies to create the space for healing, and so it's really been kind of like this unfolding.
Yeah, sure.
And I use music and guided meditation and breath work.
Yeah. Okay. It's amazing. It's amazing. If we meet a year from now, what are we going to be celebrating?
It's funny. I thought about that, and there was a point in time when I was really getting out and speaking quite a bit. And, I was really inspired by this aspect of going to businesses and doing keynote presentations and stuff, really providing an alternative to how people could create, yes, the success, but also have the fulfillment, the meaning, and the passion, which we all seek on one level or another. And I started going into companies 10 years ago, I was ahead of my time, way over their heads.
Yeah.
And, they all took a CD, but nobody was willing to hire me and have me come work for them. So when you ask that question, I think what I would like to celebrate in a year is like, you know what, I'm going to take this work back into more of the mainstream because, you know, I've been hanging around with the sound bowl people and yogis and all that stuff. And, you know, I've always had this passion to complete the hero's journey. I came out of that space.
Yeah.
I've learned a tremendous amount. I want to go back and share what I've learned. Yeah.
I think it'd be really cool.
See what, you know, how you could help them, especially where I see some of these younger guys who are already feeling it, man. Something doesn't feel right. And maybe to provide them with some tools and resources. Yeah. So that's a long way of answering your question, but it would be to get out and do some keynotes more in that mainstream environment space and bring this technology there.
Yeah. Awesome. If you could put one message on a billboard, what would it be?
Life happens from the inside out. You know, we've been so trained to brush the mirror to try to change the reflection. And to a certain degree, life is a reflection. Yeah. You put the brush to your head, things change. Got to work within our own selves. Yeah. You know, and that's, I think, what the energy and the music and sound healing has really opened up a vehicle that really allows people to, yes, tune their strings, but also open themselves up and kind of like let go of stuff. You know, we've all had stuff we picked up in our lives, you know, but we've been so trained to brush the mirror, trying to change the reflection. And no matter how hard you try to do that, it's not going to work. Yeah. So in essence, life happens from the inside out.
That's a good one. Good one. How can people connect with you, engage with you?
Hey, you can always go to the website, which is markromeromusic.com, Mark with a K, Romero music.com. And you can find me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, Mark Romero Music. Same thing with Instagram and Facebook, and invite you to come in and download a track of music, breathe along with it, and see what can open up for you when you cut through the static and noise of the modern day world.
You want to close us out with one more song? Or
absolutely. So this would be, it's entitled The Journey. And it was really kind of, it's kind of a piece that was composed with this idea, helping people acknowledge how far they've come on their journey. You know, sometimes we forget how far we've come. Think of all the lessons we've learned. There you go. The journey.
Beautiful. Mark, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Sharing.
Pleasure.
Thanks everyone who has tuned in. We look forward to being back in studio next week. Cheers.
Tune in next week for the latest edition of the Zandbergen Report, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Catch up on our recent shows by visiting podcast.bartzandbergen.com. The Zandbergen Report is also available on iTunes, iHeartRadio and Spotify. Interested in being a featured guest on our show or have a question you'd like to hear us answer? Email podcast@bartzandbergen.com. The contents of this podcast episode do not constitute an offer of securities or a solicitation of an offer to buy securities and may not be relied upon in making an investment decision related to any investment offering Access Wealth Management LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Access does not warrant the accuracy or completeness of the information contained herein. Opinions are our current opinions and are subject to change without notice. Prices, quotes, rates are subject to change without notice. Generally, investments are not FDIC insured, not bank guaranteed, and may lose value.